There are mysteries about Joan of Arc that historians still cannot fully explain. How did an illiterate peasant girl convince military leaders to give her armor and an army? What really happened during her private examination at Poitiers? Why did she return to wearing male clothing after her public abjuration? This video uncovers her journey from first visions at age 13 through her dangerous missions, battlefield victories, the crowning she made possible, her controversial trial and defense strategies, the immediate aftermath of her execution, and how she became one of history's most enduring figures despite her tragic end. The conflict that would become known as the 100 Years' War ignited in the year 1337. Its origins lay in a profound succession crisis following the death of the French King Charles IV in 1328. He died without a direct male heir, creating a legal and political vacuum. French nobility adhering to a strict interpretation of Salic law, which barred inheritance through the female line, passed the crown to Philip VI, a cousin of the deceased king. This decision, however, was not accepted across the English Channel. King Edward III of England possessed a powerful counterclaim to the French throne. His mother, Isabella, was the daughter of King Philip IV of France, making Edward the grandson of a French monarch. Edward argued that his direct maternal lineage gave him a superior right to rule France over Philip VI, whose claim came through a purely male, but more distant line. For several years, a tense peace held, but Edward's ambitions and French provocations over the Duchy of Aquitaine made war inevitable. Edward formally declared himself the rightful king of France in 1340, a move that transformed a feudal dispute into a dynastic war for the entire kingdom. The war's early phase was marked by stunning English military successes. At the Battle of Crecy in 1346, English longbowmen decimated a much larger and heavily armored French force. This victory demonstrated a tactical revolution and established English dominance on the battlefield. A decade later, at the Battle of Poitiers in 1356, the English achieved an even more dramatic victory. The French army was once again defeated, and this time, the French king, John II, was captured by English forces. The capture of the French king plunged France into a deep crisis. King John was taken to England as a prisoner, leaving the country leaderless and vulnerable. The Dauphin, the future Charles V, was forced to govern a realm facing military collapse, economic ruin, and widespread social unrest. The political instability was compounded by peasant revolts, such as the Jacquerie, and power struggles among the nobility. France entered one of the darkest periods in its history, its very existence as an independent kingdom hanging in the balance, setting the stage for the dramatic events that would later involve a young woman from Domremy. But how could a kingdom already on the brink of collapse possibly withstand the shock of tearing itself apart from within? France descended into a brutal civil war, a conflict that tore the kingdom apart from within. Two powerful noble factions, the Armagnacs and the Burgundians, fought for control of the mentally ill King Charles VI and the French throne. This internal strife crippled the nation's ability to resist its external enemy, England. The conflict was not merely political, but deeply personal, fueled by generations of rivalry and ambition. The country was effectively split, with towns and regions forced to choose sides in a devastating power struggle. The situation reached a critical turning point in the year 1419. During a supposed peace meeting on the bridge at Montereau, the Burgundian leader, John the Fearless, was assassinated by Armagnac partisans. This act was not just a murder, it was a political earthquake. It transformed a bitter rivalry into an unforgivable blood feud. The new Burgundian Duke, Philip the Good, sought a powerful ally for vengeance, turning directly to Henry V of England. This alliance gave the English a decisive foothold within French territory and loyal French troops. The Anglo-Burgundian Pact culminated in the Treaty of Troyes in the year 1420. This shocking agreement legally disinherited the Dauphin, Charles, the son of King Charles VI, branding him a usurper. The treaty declared the English king, Henry V, the legitimate heir to the French crown, to be followed by his heirs. France was now bound by treaty to become a possession of the English monarchy. This created the profound national crisis into which Joan of Arc was born. A world where the rightful French heir was an outcast, and the kingdom's future seemed permanently lost. But from where could a savior emerge in such a divided land? After her capture at Compiègne in May 1430, Joan of Arc entered a long period of imprisonment. She was initially held by her Burgundian captors, who transferred her to the castle of Beaurevoir. She remained there for several months. Historical accounts note that during this time, she made a daring escape attempt from the high tower, an act that resulted in significant injury. Her fate, however, was not to be decided by the Burgundians. In November of that same year, they sold the valuable prisoner to their English allies for a substantial sum of 10,000 livres. This transaction marked a pivotal shift in her custody. The English then arranged her transfer to Rouen, their administrative capital in occupied France. This journey, undertaken in the depths of winter, was a carefully controlled procession. She arrived in Rouen in late December 1430, where she was imprisoned in the city's castle. A critical aspect of her confinement was its secular nature. Despite the charges against her being entirely religious, primarily heresy, she was denied ecclesiastical custody. Instead of being held in a church prison under the supervision of church officials, she was kept in a secular, military prison controlled by the English. This decision was highly significant. Joan was placed under the direct guard of English soldiers, a detail that many historians have highlighted as a breach of contemporary ecclesiastical law. Theologians of the time argued that a female suspect in a heresy case should be held in a church prison with women as guards. Her imprisonment with male English soldiers was therefore a point of major contention. Scholars suggest this arrangement was a deliberate English strategy to maintain physical control over a potent symbolic threat and to influence the judicial proceedings that were to follow. This calculated control over Joan's imprisonment consequently set the stage for a trial where her fate would be predetermined. The trial of condemnation against Joan of Arc opened on January 9, 1431, in Rouen. Presiding over the proceedings was Père Cauchon, the Bishop of Beauvais, whose allegiance to the English crown was a critical factor. From the very start, the proceedings were designed not merely as a legal examination, but as a political spectacle aimed at destroying her credibility. The initial indictment contained a staggering 70 charges leveled against the Maid of Orléans. These accusations centered primarily on two key transgressions: heresy and the act of cross-dressing. The charge of heresy targeted her divine visions and voices, while the cross-dressing allegation focused on her refusal to abandon male military attire. Modern analysis has revealed these charges were carefully constructed to portray her as a tool of dark forces. The underlying political objective of the trial was stark. Its primary aim was to discredit Charles VII, the French King John had helped crown. By proving John was a witch or a heretic, the English and their Burgundian allies could argue Charles gained his throne through witchcraft, thereby invalidating his reign. This strategy transformed a religious trial into a potent weapon of political propaganda, sealing the fate of the young woman who had become a national symbol. This political strategy now set the stage for a meticulous interrogation process designed to systematically dismantle Joan's claims of divine guidance. The interrogation phase of Joan of Arc's trial presented a relentless intellectual battlefield. Over multiple sessions in the first months of 1431, a rotating panel of learned clerics and theologians subjected the young woman to intense, often repetitive questioning. Their primary objective was to trap her into a theological error regarding her visions of Saints Michael, Catherine, and Margaret, and the divine mission they had supposedly given her. They probed the physical nature of the apparitions, demanding to know if they had hair and what language they spoke, seeking any inconsistency to label her a heretic or a fabricator. Joan's responses were characterized by a remarkable blend of rustic simplicity and sharp wit, which frequently confounded her educated interrogators. When asked complex questions about church doctrine, she often deferred to a higher court, stating she would answer only to the Pope or to God himself. This strategic refusal to be drawn into theological debates, she was unequipped for, demonstrated a keen understanding of her precarious position. Her answers were direct yet evasive, grounded in her personal conviction rather than scholarly argument. One researcher noted this created a dialogical stalemate, where her interrogators could not break her core narrative. The climax of this verbal duel came during a session in mid-March. Bishop Père Cauchon, leading the trial, posed a famously treacherous question. "Do you know if you are in God's grace?" A yes would have been deemed the sin of presumption, a claim to divine knowledge, while a no would have been a confession of sinfulness. Joan's reply was a masterstroke of spiritual and intellectual defense. She stated, "If I am not, may God put me there. If I am, may God so." This brilliant answer, as one analysis revealed, perfectly sidestepped the theological trap, affirming her faith without making a dogmatic claim about her own soul. It left the court momentarily silenced, encapsulating her unique defense throughout the entire ordeal. Despite her brilliant defense, the mounting pressure would soon force Joan into an impossible choice between her convictions and her life. On May 24, 1431, a tense scene unfolded in the St. Ewan cemetery. Joan of Arc, the young woman who had led French armies, stood before a hostile English-backed tribunal. The judges presented her with a stark choice: sign a document renouncing her divine visions and voices or face immediate execution by burning. Under this immense pressure, Joan submitted. She made her mark on a formal abjuration, a document that publicly denied the heavenly guidance that had defined her mission. The exact nature of what Joan signed that day remains a subject of intense historical debate. The official trial record contains a long and detailed abjuration text. However, many researchers point to witness accounts suggesting the actual document was dramatically shorter, perhaps only a few lines. Some scholars believe the lengthy version was a later fabrication by the court clerks to strengthen their case against her. Others argue the discrepancy highlights the coercive environment, where Joan may have been tricked into signing something she did not fully comprehend. This public renunciation, however, provided only a temporary reprieve. The court declared her a relapsed heretic just a few days later, leading to her execution. The disputed abjuration at the cemetery thus stands as a pivotal and deeply controversial moment. It was an act of submission extracted under the direct threat of death, its authenticity forever clouded by the conflicting records left by her accusers. This coerced renunciation would have immediate and fatal consequences, as her subsequent actions directly challenged the authority that had forced her submission. 3 days after her public abjuration, Joan of Arc resumed wearing male clothing. This single act sealed her tragic fate. Historical records from her trial reveal conflicting accounts about this pivotal moment. Some guards testified that her female garments were forcibly removed, leaving her no practical alternative but to wear what was available. Other witnesses and the official court position maintained she willfully chose to return to male attire, an act of deliberate defiance. This return constituted a formal relapse into heresy under strict ecclesiastical law. By readopting the dress she had previously sworn to abandon, Joan was deemed to have violated the terms of her abjuration. Canon law of the period was unambiguous on this point. A relapsed heretic who returned to their errors was to be handed over to secular authorities for punishment. For the judges, this action provided the final, legally justifiable reason to condemn her. The debate continues among modern scholars. Some analyses suggest the clothing switch may have been a practical necessity or a measure for personal safety. Others interpret it as a profound spiritual recommitment to the divine voices that guided her. Regardless of her motivation, the consequence was irreversible. This relapse made her execution by burning at the stake an inevitable legal outcome, carried out in the city of ruin. This legal certainty now brought her to the appointed place and time for that final act. On May 30th, 1431, the old market square in ruin became the stage for Joan of Arc's final moments. Tied to a tall pillar, the 19-year-old faced her execution by fire. As the flames began to rise, she cried out for a cross. An English soldier, moved by her plea, fashioned a small cross from a piece of wood and handed it to her. She clutched it to her chest, her eyes fixed on the heavens as the smoke thickened around her. Her last audible words were a powerful act of forgiveness, directed at the men who condemned her. She called upon the saints, with researchers noting her final utterance was a prayer. The crowd, which had moments before jeered, fell into a stunned silence, witnessing her composure. The English authorities, fearful her remains would become holy relics, took extreme measures. After the initial burning, soldiers raked the coals to expose her charred body to public view, ensuring all saw her death was real. They then burned the remains a second and a third time, reducing everything to ash and bone fragments. This triple incineration was a deliberate tactic to leave nothing behind for veneration. Finally, her ashes were systematically gathered and cast into the Seine River. This final act was meant to erase her physical presence completely from the earth. Historical analysis shows this was a common practice for heretics, intended to prevent martyr cults from forming. Yet, this very attempt to obliterate her memory ultimately cemented her legend, transforming the Maid of Orléans into an enduring symbol of faith and resilience. Yet this very attempt to destroy her legacy would prove futile, as the English authorities immediately felt compelled to launch a counter-narrative. The immediate aftermath of Joan of Arc's execution saw the English authorities taking swift measures to control the narrative. To justify their actions, they circulated official documents across Rouen and other controlled territories. These texts detailed the charges of heresy and insubordination, aiming to portray the execution as a lawful and necessary act. One English cleric wrote, "The woman was a notorious liar and a deceiver of the people, hoping to quell any potential unrest." They believed this would permanently erase her influence and solidify their political position in France. In contrast, French reactions were initially muted by fear, yet a profound sense of shock and outrage simmered beneath the surface. Many common people who had believed in her divine mission were deeply shaken. Within a remarkably short period, stories of her courage at the stake began to circulate, transforming her from a defeated warrior into a powerful symbol of martyrdom. This marked the very beginning of her legend, a narrative that would only grow stronger in the following years. Notably, King Charles VII, whom Joan had been instrumental in crowning, made no attempt to intervene in her trial or secure her release. After her death, he also took no action to recover her remains, which the English had scattered in the Seine River to prevent the creation of a relic site. Modern historical analysis suggests his inaction was a calculated political decision. By distancing himself from a condemned heretic, he likely sought to maintain fragile diplomatic channels and avoid further provoking his powerful English adversaries, a move that remains a complex aspect of his legacy. But could this political pragmatism ever be reconciled with the legacy of the woman whose divine sanction had secured his throne in 1455? King Charles VII initiated a formal nullification trial for Joan of Arc, 24 years after her execution. This legal review began shortly after French forces retook the city of Rouen, the very place where Joan had been burned at the stake. The king sought to overturn the original verdict, aiming to clear her name and, by extension, legitimize his own coronation in which she had played a pivotal role. The proceedings were a direct challenge to the English and their Burgundian allies who had orchestrated her first trial. During the extensive hearings, numerous witnesses from the original trial provided compelling testimony. They detailed significant procedural irregularities that had marred the initial process. Investigators found that the court had denied Joan access to legal counsel, a fundamental right. Furthermore, the notary's records revealed the judges had manipulated the official transcript, distorting her words to strengthen the case against her. Witnesses also stated the ecclesiastical court had overstepped its jurisdiction by trying her for matters of faith when she was actually a prisoner of war. The appellate court ultimately reached a definitive conclusion. It declared the original trial of 1431 null and void, stating Joan had been executed unjustly based on a flawed and dishonest legal process. The judges pronounced her innocent of the heresy charges that had condemned her. However, the court carefully avoided making any pronouncement on the divine origin of her visions. This deliberate separation of her legal innocence from her spiritual experiences meant the rehabilitation was judicial, not theological. The verdict served to restore her honor while leaving the question of her divine inspiration to personal belief. But how did this judicial rehabilitation eventually pave the way for her elevation to sainthood centuries later? The path to Joan of Arc's sainthood was a long and complex journey, culminating centuries after her death. Her official beatification occurred in the year 1909, a pivotal step that declared her worthy of public veneration. This was followed by her formal canonization in 1920, when she was finally recognized as a saint by the Catholic Church. The nearly 5-century delay was influenced by significant political and religious factors. For centuries, her condemnation by a church court created a profound theological complication. Historical analysis reveals that her rehabilitation trial, while clearing her name, did not immediately resolve all ecclesiastical reservations. Furthermore, political tensions, particularly the relationship between the French state and the Vatican throughout the 19th century, played a crucial role. Some historians argue that her cause was leveraged for national unity, while others point to internal church debates over the nature of her visions as a cause for the slow progress. Today, Saint Joan of Arc holds the title of patron saint of France. Her feast day is celebrated annually on May 30th, a day dedicated to honoring her life and legacy. She remains a powerful symbol of faith and courage, with her story continuing to inspire millions around the world. Her official sainthood solidified her place not only in religious history, but also as an enduring national icon. While her sainthood secured her place in the church, her influence would soon transcend religious boundaries to shape the very identity of a nation. Joan of Arc's legacy extends far beyond her military campaigns and martyrdom. She evolved into a potent national symbol for France, embodying resilience and divine favor. During the French Revolution, Republicans championed her as a daughter of the people. The 19th century solidified her status, with the Feast of Orléans established in her honor. Her image was repeatedly invoked during times of national crisis, reinforcing her role as a unifying figure. Simultaneously, Joan became an enduring feminist icon centuries before the term existed. Her defiance of gender norms was remarkable. She led armies while dressed in male attire, a fact that fascinated later scholars. Some analyses highlight her transgression of medieval social boundaries. Others focus on her agency in a male-dominated world. This interpretation gained significant traction during the 20th century women's movements, framing her as a proto-feminist. Her representation in art and literature is vast and varied. William Shakespeare portrayed her negatively as a witch in Henry VI. In contrast, Friedrich Schiller's romantic drama, The Maid of Orléans, idealized her. The 19th century saw a surge in paintings depicting her visions and triumphs. Mark Twain wrote a personal tribute in his novel, Personal Recollections of Joan of Arc, revealing his deep admiration for her character. The 20th century introduced Joan to cinema, with numerous film adaptations reflecting contemporary concerns. Carl Theodor Dreyer's The Passion of Joan of Arc from 1928 focused on a spiritual ordeal. Later Hollywood productions often emphasized her heroism and trial. Each era has reinterpreted her story, using the historical framework to explore modern themes of faith, power, and identity. The historical figure remains compelling because her narrative is so adaptable, serving different ideological purposes while retaining its core emotional power. Her story continues to inspire new artistic and scholarly interpretations, proving its timeless relevance. Joan of Arc entered the world in the small village of Domremy, nestled in the region of Lorraine. This area existed on a tense frontier, straddling the loyal French territories and lands controlled by the Burgundian faction. Her life began not in a castle but within a simple peasant family. Her father, Jacques d'Arc, worked the land and also held the respected position of village dean, a role involving local administration. Research indicates this background provided Joan with a unique perspective, rooted in rural life yet connected to community leadership. The religious environment of her childhood was profoundly influential. The village church and its teachings formed the core of her early world. Historical analysis reveals this devout setting was central to her development. However, the constant threat of conflict overshadowed this pious upbringing. Living in a border zone exposed the village to frequent raids and military incursions. From a very young age, Joan witnessed the brutality of the ongoing 100 Years' War. These experiences brought the violence of the wider conflict directly to her doorstep, shaping her understanding of the kingdom's turmoil long before she ever picked up a sword. But how could a young girl surrounded by such earthly violence find a path toward a higher purpose in the quiet of her father's garden around 1425? A profound shift occurred in the life of the young Joan of Arc. At just 13 years old, she experienced her first divine encounter. A brilliant light appeared, accompanied by a voice she would later identify as the Archangel Michael. This initial vision was both terrifying and awe-inspiring, leaving her with a deep sense of reverence. The voice commanded her to be a good and pious girl, a directive she took to heart with solemn seriousness. Soon after, the voices of Saint Catherine of Alexandria and Saint Margaret of Antioch joined Saint Michael's. These celestial visitors were not merely comforting presences, they gradually unveiled a staggering mission. They revealed that she was chosen by God to save France from its English occupiers and to ensure the Dauphin's coronation. Historical analysis suggests these figures represented a powerful conduit for her emerging national consciousness. Joan, however, was initially overwhelmed by the weight of this revelation. She expressed profound reluctance, questioning how a peasant girl could possibly lead armies and alter the fate of a kingdom. "I am just a poor girl who cannot even ride a horse or lead in war," she reportedly lamented. Yet, the visions persisted with increasing frequency and urgency. The saints returned almost daily, their messages growing more specific and insistent. They instructed her to travel to the commander of the Dauphin's forces at Vaucouleurs, marking the definitive start of her public role. This period of intense spiritual communication forged her unshakable resolve, transforming uncertainty into a divinely mandated purpose. Consequently, these divine instructions compelled her to embark on the difficult journey that would test her newfound conviction. The young peasant girl arrived at Vaucouleurs in May 1428. Her mission was clear. She needed an armed escort to reach the Dauphin. Joan of Arc confidently approached Robert de Baudricourt, the local captain. She demanded soldiers for her sacred journey. Baudricourt reacted with immediate skepticism. He saw a delusional girl from Domremy. Historians note his initial response was to dismiss her entirely. He reportedly told Joan's relative to take her home. A pivotal moment soon challenged his disbelief. In February 1429, a crucial battle occurred near Orléans. French forces attempted to intercept an English supply convoy. This event became known as the Battle of the Herrings. Before any messenger could bring the news to Vaucouleurs, Joan described the French defeat in detail. She predicted the outcome with startling accuracy. When confirmation arrived days later, her credibility transformed. The local population began to see her as a divine messenger. Faced with this verified prophecy and growing popular support, Baudricourt's position shifted. The captain could no longer ignore the girl's conviction or the people's fervor. Analysis suggests his decision became a calculated political move. He provided Joan with a small escort of 6 men-at-arms. This modest group departed for China in February 1429. It was the first crucial step on her historic path. But could this small band of 6 men successfully navigate the treacherous journey ahead? The 11-day journey from Vaucouleurs to China began in the bitter cold of February 1429. Disguised in male soldiers' attire, Jeanne d'Arc traveled with 6 loyal companions. Their mission was to traverse nearly 400 kilometers of territory firmly held by hostile Burgundian forces. Historians note the route likely followed less traveled paths and riverbanks to minimize encounters. Travel occurred primarily under the cover of darkness. This strategy significantly reduced the risk of discovery and capture. The small group moved with urgency, resting during daylight hours in forests or sympathetic settlements. Research suggests such a pace through winter terrain was exceptionally demanding, both physically and mentally. Each night's progress was a calculated risk through enemy lines. The successful arrival at Chinon on the 11th day was a remarkable feat of endurance and navigation. Some accounts propose the travelers crossed the Loire River near Gien, a final dangerous obstacle before reaching relative safety. This perilous winter trek demonstrated extraordinary determination, delivering Jeanne directly to the court of the Dauphin Charles and irrevocably altering the course of the 100 Years' War. Yet this hard-won arrival marked not the end of her trials, but the beginning of an even greater test of her conviction. The young peasant girl arrived at Chinon Castle in late February of the year 1429. Her journey to meet the Dauphin Charles was the culmination of a divine mission she claimed to have received from visions of saints. The court, steeped in political intrigue and desperation, viewed her with a mixture of skepticism and fragile hope. Charles, cautious and politically vulnerable, devised a critical test for the maiden who called herself Joan. He concealed himself among the grandeur of his courtiers, a simple test of her claimed divine insight. The great hall was filled with hundreds of nobles, all dressed in their finest attire. Yet Joan of Arc did not hesitate. She walked directly through the assembled crowd and, with unshakable conviction, knelt before the disguised Dauphin. She addressed him not as a subject to a king, but as the future monarch of France, stating, "Gentle Dauphin, I am sent by God to bring succor to you and to your kingdom." Historical accounts note this immediate identification was a powerful first sign of her legitimacy. The initial public recognition was only the beginning. Charles then took Joan aside for a private conversation. What transpired in that meeting became a state secret, but chroniclers of the time suggest she revealed a private prayer or a secret known only to Charles himself. This intimate disclosure, often interpreted by scholars as a pivotal moment of personal faith, convinced the Dauphin of her divine mandate. He later confided to his advisors that she had told him things he believed only God could know. Despite this profound personal conviction, Charles remained a pragmatic ruler. He could not risk his political future on faith alone. Therefore, before granting her military command, he ordered a thorough theological and physical examination of Joan by a council of learned clergy in Poitiers. This investigation aimed to verify her orthodoxy, her virginity, and the nature of her visions. The Poitiers Commission, after weeks of intense questioning, found no evil in her and recommended Charles place his trust in her, a decision that would alter the course of the 100 Years' War. While the Commission's ultimate recommendation was clear, the rigorous process of their theological inquiry deserves closer examination. For 3 weeks in March 1429, Joan of Arc underwent intensive questioning in Poitiers. A commission of theologians, including prominent figures like Guillaume Aymeri and Jean Héroldt, was assembled. Their task was to determine the orthodoxy of her visions and the soundness of her mind. This was a critical step following her initial meeting with the Dauphin. The examiners probed deeply into the nature of her divine voices and her mission to save France. They questioned her faith, her intention to wear men's clothing, and her specific military aims. Historical analysis reveals their questions were designed to uncover heresy or mental instability. Joan's responses, documented in later trial records, were consistently steadfast and rooted in her profound Catholic belief. She maintained that Saints Michael, Catherine, and Margaret commanded her to lead the Dauphin to his coronation. After this thorough investigation, the theologians reached a unanimous conclusion. They found no evil or falsehood in her, only remarkable piety and a virtuous character. They cautiously advised him to put her to the test through actions, specifically by allowing her to go to Orléans, rather than relying solely on their theological assessment. They cautiously advised him to put her to the test through actions, specifically by allowing her to go to Orléans, rather than relying solely on their theological assessment. This conditional endorsement provided the political and spiritual legitimacy Joan needed to proceed with her campaign. But how would this untested young woman be equipped to face the trials of war following her pivotal meeting with the future King Charles VII in the town of Chinon? Joan of Arc was provided with a full set of military equipment. The French court commissioned a custom suit of armor for her, a significant financial undertaking. Historical accounts describe this armor as being entirely white, a polished steel finish without the decorative coverings typical of nobility. This distinctive armor was crafted in the city of Tours, with research indicating the work was completed around the month of April in the year 1429. The ensemble also included a lance, a sword, and a banner, equipping her for the forthcoming campaign to lift the English siege of Orleans. Perhaps more iconic than her armor was the personal banner Joan carried. She reportedly placed great importance on its design, which she claimed was dictated to her by divine guidance. The banner featured a depiction of Jesus Christ seated in judgment amidst clouds, flanked by one angel on each side holding lilies. The field was sown with fleurs de lis, and the names Jesus Maria were inscribed. Analysis of historical records reveals Joan had a strong personal preference for this banner, often choosing to carry it herself into combat rather than wielding a sword. She stated it was her sign and that she did not wish to use her sword to kill anyone. Regarding her sword, Joan made a specific request. She asked that an ancient blade be retrieved from the church of Saint Catherine of Fifebois. According to her testimony, this sword was located behind the altar, its location revealed to her through her visions. While she possessed this weapon and others, her primary role on the battlefield was that of a commander and a standard-bearer. She led assaults and inspired troops while holding her sacred banner high, a symbolic figure whose presence was considered by contemporaries to be a major morale boost for the French army. On March 22, 1429, Joan of Arc dictated a letter to be sent to the English commanders besieging Orléans. The message was uncompromising. She demanded the English surrender the keys to all French towns they occupied and withdraw their forces from the kingdom. Her words carried a divine authority, as she famously warned them, "I have been sent by God, the King of Heaven, to drive you body for body out of all France." She offered a path to peace, stating she would show them mercy if they departed willingly. However, if they refused, she promised great violence would befall them. The English commanders, including the Earl of Suffolk and Lord Talbot, received the letter with contempt. Historical accounts suggest they dismissed the young woman's claims as either madness or heresy. They reportedly mocked the messenger and intensified their resolve to capture the so-called Maid of Orléans. This dismissive response was a critical miscalculation. Instead of intimidating the French, their scorn solidified Joan's position as a genuine threat. The English command now viewed her capture or death as a primary military objective, believing it would shatter French morale and ensure their victory at Orléans. This single letter transformed a military standoff into a deeply personal and ideological conflict. But the English commanders would soon discover that their target was already moving toward them, turning their strategic calculations into a desperate race against time. On the evening of April 29, 1429, a 17-year-old peasant girl entered the besieged city of Orléans. Joan of Arc, clad in white armor, rode through the Burgundy Gate. Her arrival was not a secret assault but a deliberate, public procession along the city's southern ramparts. She carried her legendary banner, a sight that electrified the wary citizens and soldiers. The English troops watched from their fortifications, but contemporary accounts suggest they did not interfere. This theatrical entry was a masterstroke of psychological warfare, instantly transforming the city's despair into a flicker of hope. The military situation was dire. Orléans was encircled by a chain of 6 English forts, known as bastilles, blocking all land access. The French commanders, experienced men like the Bastard of Orléans and Marshal de Reyes, were initially deeply skeptical. They favored a cautious, defensive strategy to preserve their limited forces. Joan, however, advocated for immediate and aggressive assaults. Historical analysis reveals a clear tension between her divinely inspired confidence and the commander's pragmatic reluctance. They saw a reckless maiden, she saw a path to victory ordained by God. To demonstrate her resolve and divine favor, Joan did something extraordinary the next day. She embarked on a morale-boosting circuit around the English fortifications. Riding along the city walls in full view of both armies, she taunted the enemy soldiers, shouting for them to surrender. This bold act, while militarily unorthodox, had a profound effect. It convinced many French soldiers that she was indeed protected by a higher power. Her unwavering presence began to erode the commander's resistance, setting the stage for the audacious attacks that would soon break the siege. This newfound conviction among the French troops consequently compelled their commanders to authorize the first major offensive. The assault on the Saint-Loup fortress began with a chaotic and costly French advance. English archers unleashed a storm of arrows from the ramparts, forcing the initial waves to retreat in disarray. Morale plummeted as soldiers fell back under the relentless volleys. At this critical moment, Joan of Arc rode forward. She rallied the faltering troops, her presence and unwavering conviction cutting through the fog of battle. She implored the men to press the attack, transforming their fear into a renewed, desperate fury. The French soldiers, reinvigorated, launched a second, more determined assault. They swarmed the outer defenses under a hail of projectiles. Fierce, close-quarters combat erupted as they breached the walls. The English garrison, though heavily outnumbered, fought tenaciously. However, the French momentum proved unstoppable. After hours of intense fighting, the fortress fell into French hands. The victory was secured on May 4th, a date that would echo through the remaining days of the siege. This first military triumph under Joan's direct involvement was a profound psychological turning point. Contemporary chronicles note the immediate shift in the army's spirit. Where there was once doubt, there was now a fervent belief in the Maid's divine mission. The capture of Saint-Loup provided the French with a crucial foothold and demonstrated a viable strategy against the English strongholds. It fundamentally established Joan's credibility, not just as a symbolic figure, but as a capable and inspiring military leader. This newfound credibility would soon be tested in an even more brutal confrontation, one that would push her leadership to its absolute limit. On May 7th, during the fierce assault on the formidable bastion of Les Tourelles, a critical moment unfolded. Joan of Arc, leading from the front, was struck by an arrow. The projectile penetrated her shoulder just above the breast. Despite the severe wound, she did not retreat from the battle. Historical accounts note she refused to have the arrow fully removed, allowing only a basic dressing to stop the bleeding. Her physical resilience became a powerful symbol for the weary French soldiers. Remarkably, Joan returned to the fray, continuing to direct the troops and maintain their morale. She reportedly made a bold prediction to the Duke of Alençon, assuring him the fortress would be theirs before the day was over. This declaration, made while she was visibly injured, galvanized the French forces. They redoubled their efforts against the English defenders. The fighting continued intensely for hours, with the French gradually gaining the upper hand. The following day, May 8th, the English garrison made a strategic decision. They abandoned their positions at Les Tourelles and withdrew from their surrounding fortifications. This retreat effectively ended the 7-month-long siege of Orléans. The city was liberated, marking a stunning and pivotal victory for the French in the 100 Years' War. It was this triumphant success that cemented Joan's legendary status and earned her the immortal nickname, the Maid of Orléans, a title celebrating the young woman who altered the course of the conflict. Yet this hard-won liberation was only the beginning, as the French forces soon faced an even more aggressive challenge. The Battle of Jargeau on June 12, 1429, marked a pivotal moment in the Loire campaign. Joan of Arc, alongside commanders like the Duke of Alençon, led the French assault to capture this fortified town from the English. The fighting was intense and direct. During the height of the action, Joan was personally involved in the assault on the walls. A stone from a cannon or thrown from the rampart struck her, forcefully knocking her helmet to the ground. Contemporary accounts note she was momentarily stunned but quickly rose, urging her soldiers forward. This act reportedly galvanized the French troops. The town fell after a determined struggle. This victory was strategically vital. It secured a key bridgehead over the Loire River. Controlling Jargeau effectively cleared the English from a major approach to the city of Reims. Reims held immense symbolic importance as the traditional coronation site for French kings. By opening this route, Joan and the French army created a viable path to crown the Dauphin Charles III. This sequence of victories fundamentally shifted the war's momentum in favor of the French, turning a strategic defense into a confident offensive. Some historians argue the Loire campaign was the conflict's true turning point. Yet the most stunning demonstration of this newfound French momentum was still to come, a victory so complete it would defy all English expectations. The Battle of Patay on June 18th proved to be the most decisive French triumph of the Loire campaign. French scouts, moving swiftly ahead of the main force, located the English army before it could establish its signature defensive palisades. This critical intelligence allowed the French vanguard to launch an immediate and devastating cavalry charge. The English archers, caught completely unprepared, were overrun in a matter of minutes. Their formation shattered before a proper battle line could even be formed. The victory was astonishingly comprehensive. French casualties were remarkably light, with contemporary accounts suggesting only a handful of fatalities. In stark contrast, English losses were catastrophic. The majority of the English force was either killed or captured during the chaotic rout that stretched across the countryside. Among the high-ranking prisoners were esteemed commanders like William de la Pole and John Fastolf. A capture that delivered a severe blow to English military leadership. Modern analysis reveals the battle's true significance lay in its tactical execution. The French demonstrated a new level of coordination and aggressive initiative, neutralizing the English longbow's advantage through superior reconnaissance and shock tactics. This engagement effectively destroyed the core of the veteran English army in France, paving the way for the subsequent march toward Reims and a pivotal shift in the war's momentum. The road to the French coronation was now decisively open. With the English army's core destroyed, this victory consequently enabled the French forces to immediately embark on their crucial northern advance. The march through Champagne in July 1429 represented a strategic and political turning point. Joan of Arc and the Dauphin Charles advanced northward from Geburg. Their objective was the coronation city of Reims. Town after town opened its gates without resistance. This unopposed progress demonstrated a dramatic shift in regional loyalties. The populace increasingly viewed Charles as the legitimate king of France. The bloodless capture of Troyes on July 12th was particularly significant. This well-fortified city had initially closed its gates to the royal army. After a short standoff, its citizens and leaders opted for surrender. The army entered Troyes peacefully. Similar scenarios unfolded in Châlons and other smaller towns along the route. These surrenders provided the Dauphin's forces with vital supplies and secured their lines of communication. Analysis has shown this phase was more a political victory than a military one. The presence of Joan of Arc, already famous as the Maid of Orléans, bolstered the morale of Charles's supporters and sowed doubt among his opponents. Each surrendered town reinforced his claim to the throne. This widespread acceptance in a previously contested region paved a safe path to Reims. It allowed for Charles's coronation just days later, a crucial event that solidified his legitimacy in the eyes of many. This secure journey culminated in the momentous ceremony that would formally anoint him as the rightful monarch of France. The long-awaited coronation unfolded within the majestic Reims Cathedral on July 17, 1429. This sacred ritual represented the culmination of Joan of Arc's divine mission, her presence a testament to its fulfillment. As the holy oil was administered, she stood resolutely beside Charles, her personal banner depicting figures of Christ and angels held high. Historians note this was a profound visual statement, her standard sharing the sacred space, symbolizing the divine sanction she brought to the proceedings. The ceremony itself was a transformative act of political theology. With the anointing, Charles the Dauphin was reborn as King Charles VII of France. This was not merely a title change, it was a legal and spiritual metamorphosis. Contemporary chronicles emphasize how the coronation at Reims, the traditional site for French kings, instantly legitimized his claim in the eyes of his subjects and foreign courts. It invalidated the English-backed Treaty of Troyes and re-established the unbroken line of the Valois monarchy. For Joan, this moment was the peak of her influence. Having shepherded the Dauphin through hostile territory to his rightful throne, her core objective was achieved. Analysis of the event highlight that her position next to the new king during the anointing was unprecedented for a woman of her status, a clear acknowledgement of her indispensable role. This single day cemented Charles's authority and marked the beginning of the end for the English occupation, turning the tide of the 100 Years' War. Yet this hard-won momentum would soon confront its first major setback, as military fortunes dramatically reversed. In September 1429, Joan of Arc's triumphant campaign faced a devastating reversal during the failed assault on Paris. The French army, under nominal royal authority but driven by Joan's unwavering conviction, launched an attack on the heavily fortified English positions. The fighting was most intense near the Saint-Honoré Gate, where Joan, as always, positioned herself in the thick of the combat. It was here that a crossbow bolt struck her, wounding her severely in the thigh and forcing her retreat from the front lines. Her removal was a critical blow to the morale of the attacking forces. Despite her injury, Joan urged a continuation of the offensive. However, King Charles VII, influenced by his counselor Georges de la Trémoille, made a decisive and controversial choice. Analysis of chronicles reveals the king's growing political caution, prioritizing diplomacy over Joan's aggressive military strategy. On September 8, he gave the order to withdraw, effectively abandoning the assault on the capital. This retreat was not merely a tactical pause. Charles subsequently disbanded the main royal army, a move that marked the definitive end of Joan's successful offensive operations that had begun with the liberation of Orléans. The momentum she had so brilliantly built was irrevocably broken. Some historians argue the king sought to negotiate from a position of strength, while others believe he deliberately sidelined the increasingly influential Maid. This withdrawal left Joan without a significant military force, drastically altering her fate and the course of the 100 Years' War. Yet this strategic withdrawal would soon be followed by a far more definitive reversal of fortune. On May 23, 1430, during a chaotic skirmish outside Compiègne, the city gates were closed behind her retreating force. This decisive action, whether a tactical decision or a calculated betrayal, cut off her escape route and left her isolated with a small band of soldiers. Trapped between the city walls and the advancing Burgundian army, her capture became inevitable. Historical accounts describe her final moments of freedom as a scene of desperate resistance. Surrounded, she was ultimately compelled to surrender to Lionel de Vendôme, a bastard of Vendôme and a captain in the Burgundian forces. This was not the capture of a common soldier but a prized political asset. Her captors immediately recognized her immense value to their English allies, initiating a transaction that would seal her fate. The transfer was swift and mercenary. Joan was sold to the English for the substantial sum of 10,000 livres. This transaction transformed her from a prisoner of war into a political captive, setting the stage for her subsequent trial. Researchers note that this sale was a clear indication of her perceived symbolic power, demonstrating that her enemies feared her influence even from a prison cell far more than her military prowess on the battlefield. The hope that had once animated the French cause was now locked away, awaiting a prejudiced trial. This transfer of custody consequently initiated her journey through a series of political prisons, ultimately placing her fate in the hands of a new, powerful authority. Our journey into the life of Joan of Arc comes to an end. From her humble beginnings in Lorraine and first visions at 13, her path led through convincing Robert de Baudricourt and a dangerous journey through enemy territory. Her arrival at the besieged city marked the beginning of attacks on St. Loup Fort and a wounding before the final assault. This led to victory at Jargeau and the Battle of Péteraut, followed by her march through Champagne and the crowning of Charles V as king. Though the failed attack on Paris and her capture at Compiègne led to English control and a trial of condemnation, her nullification trial and subsequent canonization cemented her sainthood. Her historical and cultural legacy endures. Subscribe to our channel to not miss new episodes. Until next time.